So in today's video, we're going to be going through a clip in which Avery has a discussion with a Muslim where he tries to prove to him the reliability of the Gospel of Matthew. How well do you think he did?
You asked me excellent question.
So I could say the same thing. Our God, Yahweh, inspired the disciples, the gospel writers, in the Greek and wrote down what Jesus said in the language that was common to the tongue.
Who are the gospel writers?
Who are the writers of the Quran?
Are they messengers of God?
Yes.
Are they mentioned in the Bible?
Yes.
Where?
Here you go. The Gospel of Matthew.
But not
Matthew. Hold on.
Matthew, he wrote the gospel.
Matthew wrote the Gospel according to Jesus of Matthew.
So he wrote it himself. So he can talk also about himself.
And so here it is.
I'm
Matthew, the tax collector. Hold on, excuse me. You asked a question.
Yeah.
Matthew is one of the original 12 disciples of Jesus.
Folks, you're about to see something really special when it comes to circular arguments.
Are the companions messengers?
The Quran.
Are the companions messengers?
No, they weren't.
But they're writing the Quran?
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
Oh, but you challenged Matthew for writing the gospel, and he's a messenger.
Yeah. But
Matthew. Okay, so Matthew. So can you admit then that Matthew has more credit?
No.
Wait. Can you admit that Matthew has more credit than the companions of Muhammad who are not messengers?
No, not at all.
Why not? Why not? Matthew's a messenger.
Because was Matthew at the time of Jesus living?
Yeah, he's one of the disciples.
One of the. How do you know?
Because it says it right here in the gospel. He's one of the disciples.
Because it's in the gospel.
Right here. And he called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and affliction. The names of the 12 apostles are these: Simon, called Peter, Andrew, his brother, James, the son of Zebedee, John, his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12, Jesus sent out. So they're messengers. Jesus sent them as messengers.
So what you just witnessed is Avery claiming that you should trust the Gospel of Matthew because Matthew says in the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus sent him. Now that's just the first of multiple issues. So you see, even in Shi'ism, and Sunnis don't really take Shi'i standards seriously, but they got this one right. When it comes to determining the reliability of a narrator, a lot of the times they determine the reliability of a narrator by one of their imams praising the narrator. Now, they would accept those statements as long as the praise from the imam arrives at the imam through an authentic chain. However, the exception would be is if we're actually trying to look into the status of his companion. So if the companion of the imam is saying, the imam said that I'm going to go to heaven, well, we can't really rely upon that statement in order to come to a judgment in regards to that companion of the imam, because it's circular. So the brother is asking, why do you trust Matthew? And Avery is saying, we trust Matthew because Matthew said that Jesus said that Matthew is a messenger. Now, what's more ironic is that one of these messengers happens to be Judas. So let's check out that clip one more time.
And Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12, Jesus sent out.
Well, there goes your argument, Avery. One of those messengers that you mentioned is someone that betrayed Jesus. So how can we assume, why would we assume that a messenger that is sent by Jesus is reliable when a glaring example of one of those that you've mentioned actually betrays Jesus? The brother is asking you, why should we trust them? And you're saying, well, it's because the messengers are reliable. Well, one of them actually killed Jesus or was the cause for his death, I would assume that would make you unreliable.
So they're messengers. Jesus sent them as messengers.
Jesus sent them as a message, but you believe Jesus is God, right?
Absolutely. It shows it right here. Only God has the ability to send messengers, right?
Wow. Okay, wow. Just wow. So according to Avery, and he's saying this literally, only God has the ability to send messengers. Now let's break this down. We determine whether a messenger is a messenger by the signs, the miracles, prophecies about them, and whatnot. We don't assume that someone is a messenger simply because they said, I am a messenger, and only God sends messengers, and therefore I am reliable. No one approaches religion in that way, except for Avery, apparently. Avery, you're just simply relying on someone's claim. That's insufficient. You can also see that Avery is clearly distraught by the line of questioning, despite it being extremely simple, and that it is something that he is struggling massively with.
You believe Jesus is God, but
Yeah.
he's also the Son of God.
Yeah, only God has the ability to send messengers, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So this is Jesus showing you he's God because he's sending messengers.
Where does he say he's sending messages?
These 12, Jesus sent out, instructing
How
them.
do you know? How do you know that?
It's in the gospel. I just read it.
Hear that, guys? The Gospel of Matthew mentions that Matthew is a messenger and therefore Jesus is God. I mean, you can't make this up.
So do you see, my friend? Do you see the amount of skepticism, hyper skepticism that you have with the gospel and the messengers of the gospel? But you don't have this, but you don't have, let me finish. Let me finish. But you don't have the same skepticism when it comes to your Quran and how it was written.
Exactly.
And to end this off, Avery's calling out this Muslim for being someone that's showing skepticism. And actually, the Muslim here is just showing minimal skepticism. You guys want him to accept Christianity because Matthew claimed to be a messenger? That's like actually sufficient? So Avery, what you're doing is you're breaking my heart, and let me help you out. Let me show you how you're supposed to make this argument. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to appeal to someone else that claimed that Matthew is a messenger, not Matthew's claim himself. What you're supposed to be doing is you're supposed to be saying something like, John made the claim that Matthew is a messenger, or perhaps Mark and Luke, even though they're second generation narrators, and we don't know if they've ever met Matthew, but we could, for the sake of the argument, assume that they got this one right, and we can bring our bar of skepticism a bit lower and accept that it's fine. We're not speaking about miraculous events here. We can find statements like that to be acceptable. So you see, a Muslim doesn't have to be skeptical of everything that's in the Bible and everything that you guys are saying. However, of course, I am skeptical about statements by Mark and by Luke, people who weren't there, who weren't contemporaneous to Jesus, who make claims about his specific actions, especially if they're actions that are somewhat hard to swallow, things like miracles and whatnot. Of course, I accept those miracles because of me accepting Islam, but that's a whole different story. It's a part of my ideology due to my acceptance of the Quran and what the Quran mentions about Jesus. Of course, we're not speaking about historical evidence at this specific moment. Now, if the information is mundane, once again, I do not mind accepting that Matthew was indeed a disciple of Jesus, and that's the sort of mundane information that historians wouldn't really have trouble accepting. However, when it comes to these greater claims, naturally one has to be skeptical, especially in the case of Matthew, because Matthew, according to the vast majority of New Testament scholars, is someone that is quoting the Gospel of Mark, which is very strange because, again, Mark is a second generation source. Why would someone who was there at the time Why would someone contemporaneous to Jesus, a student of Jesus, a disciple of Jesus, a messenger of Jesus, according to you, you use those words, why would he be quoting a second generation source? Very strange. And another strange matter is if you actually look into the Gospel of Matthew, there are no indications that this is written by an eyewitness. There are no statements in which he says, I heard Jesus, I saw Jesus do this and that. He's never referring to himself in the first person, which gives his book less legitimacy because it puts this gap between him and the actual events that are occurring. In fact, in the Gospel of Matthew, when it mentions Matthew, it mentions him in the third person, and I see absolutely no wisdom for that to occur unless the book was written by someone other than Matthew himself. Check this out. These are verses from Matthew chapter 9. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax booth. Follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. Later, as Jesus was dining at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Now, if I was Matthew, I would have written something like this instead. As Jesus went on from there, he came across me when I was sitting at the tax booth. Follow me, he told me, and I got up and followed him. Later, as Jesus was dining at my house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with us. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked us, why did your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Now, according to the standard methodology of historians, you need to rely on eyewitness accounts. And because of this, Matthew, if you're going to even assume that he wrote the book and he's speaking in third person, by speaking in third person, he's distancing himself away from the events, which makes everything mentioned in the Gospel of Matthew less credible. So basically, Matthew is undermining his book by speaking in this matter. Again, if you even assume that he actually wrote that gospel. Of course, all of this is related to the original discussion between Avery and the Muslim brother. Anyhow, Avery is speaking to the Muslim about skepticism, and you're not supposed to be the skeptical, when you can see quite clearly that Avery is just so attached to his beliefs that he's got the naivety of a child that's waiting for Santa to come down that chimney. So my advice to Christians that do believe in the Gospel of Matthew or believe in any of the Gospels, I strongly recommend taking your time looking into the reliability of these works, perhaps checking out my playlist with Brother Ijaz Ahmed where we go through the reliability of the Gospels one by one. Inshallah, it will be a great learning experience for you folks. And to the rest of you guys, I'll catch you guys later. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Logic.
That's the discussion we and you have.
Logic. That's what it is.
That's not logic.
It's
That's
logic.
Yeah, from you it's logic.
Logic.
But from us, it's not logic. So we believe we